friends and partners of Jubilee Christian Center.
Hey everybody, I'm Dick Bernal. Welcome to our show. This is Larry Huggins, and I'm glad we hesitated because he was singing a moment ago, and we
and it almost got on the show.
We decided to hold the cameras off until he finished. But you don't have to sing it. But what are the words to that song? That
you don't want me to sing it. Well, I anticipate the inevitable supernatural intervention of God. I expect a miracle.
I think our old friend and my golfing buddy,
Oral Roberts,
used that as his theme song.
Yeah.
And some of you might remember, not like he's gone, but Mario Murillo, who did a lot at our church back in the day, and Ron Canoli used to travel with him, and Ron would sing right before Mario came out, because it was one of those things. Say it again. I anticipate. What is it, the inevitable?
I have to sing it. I can't remember if I don't sing it. I anticipate the inevitable supernatural intervention of God. I expect a miracle. And then they repeat that last line. I expect a miracle.
Well, you know, the Bible says, Jesus said, you can have what you say.
Yeah.
If you believe in your heart, doubt not. And to get people into an expectancy. Let's talk about something that doesn't get talked about a lot in the modern, cool church world, with multimedia, bells and whistles, skinny jeans, and spiked hair, and it's all good. If it's working, it's all good. We're a little bit of old school guys. We still believe in the power of God and the miracle working of Jesus.
Absolutely.
Even right here in a place that may need it more than any place in America, the San Francisco Bay Area.
Which is a good place to talk about Friday Night Fire.
We'll go ahead.
Yeah, may as well. So we're talking about miracles, but on Friday nights, Jubilee is going back to having Friday night services. We're calling it Friday Night Fire because there will be an emphasis on the miraculous and the supernatural.
Now, what you and I call a miracle is normal to God.
Yeah, that's the way things happen in the realm of God, the kingdom of God.
There's natural, then there's the supernatural, where things that are hard to explain, can't prove scientifically. And maybe that's why in this new age of technology, I mean, I remember when Santa Clara County was the Valley of Heart's Delights. I used to pick prunes and apricots. San Francisco was the big city, and we were the agricultural part of the Bay Area. Then all of a sudden, here comes Fairchild and IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and boom, Apple. And now we attract some of the brightest minds from India,
which
from China, from Europe, and that's what attracted you here.
Yeah.
And the bright minds coming later.
You know, the word supernatural, I think, is misleading because if you ask people what's the supernatural, they'll talk about ghost and paranormal, can't even say it, paranormal activity. But it's a compound word. Super means above or superior to, greater than the natural. Something greater than the natural. We're not talking about something spooky, strange, or weird. The supernatural of God is not weird. No. It's normal. You just said that. It's normal. The way we do things in the kingdom.
It's normal. And yet it seems like, and I don't understand why people in the church world theologically, and they teach it, I guess, at some seminaries, that God doesn't divine heal anymore, there's no more miracles, because we have the printed word. Well, that's a weak argument.
That's very weak.
That's very, very weak. I heard a guy say, he said, we don't need divine healing because we have doctors. He said, we don't need to speak in tongues because now we can learn languages. And no, we're talking about gifts those are not gifts. Those are things you earn, or degrees or languages. That's works. The spiritual gifts are gifts charis in the Greek. These are unmerited favors of God to do supernatural things. And I heard a guy say this, and I've repeated it. You can never win a religious argument with somebody who's had a true experience.
Right.
Try to talk somebody out of a miracle who's had one.
Yeah.
Try to talk somebody out of believing in God when you know God.
Yeah.
Try to talk somebody out of being in love when they're in love, even though we may have reasons to try to talk about it.
Come to your senses,
yeah,
man.
come to your senses, young man.
I've said that for years. I said, if you're trying to tell me that miracles don't happen, that's lost on me. I've had too many miracles. I've seen too many miracles. Bona fide, guaranteed, provable miracles. Not something I imagined, but a real intervention of God.
I've had women bring x-rays just recently. Racked with cancer, started with breast cancer, metastasized, and just prayed for, simple little prayer, Jesus, just prayed for, and came back with an x-ray and
a documented miracle.
And the doctor, nice doctor, I don't think he was a believer, but he said, well, whatever you're doing, don't stop, it's working. He hesitated using the word miracle or God, but he said, with a smile on his face, whatever you're doing, keep it up. It's working.
A few years ago, I was in Canada, and right at the end of the service, I had a word of knowledge. I said, there's someone here, and you've had operations that involved some metal appliances, plates and screws in your legs, and those were removed, but it didn't correct the problem, and the pain is still there. That's a very specific word. A 13-year-old girl came up. Her name is Marissa. Instantly healed like that. Goes back to the doctor. The doctor looks at the x-rays and says, what's going on here? She said, are you in pain? Marissa said, no, no pain. She said, I've been your orthopedic surgeon. This girl had been through surgeries ever since she was a toddler. All of your life, you've got to be in pain. She said, no pain. She said, how did that happen? Well, she told her the story. A minister of the gospel, Larry Huggins, came and prayed for me and God healed me. And so then the doctor interviews the mom and said, this is what Marissa told me. Is this true? She said, absolutely. And she said, who is this Larry Huggins? They said, well, he's a minister that travels around the world. And she said, well, if he's ever out of a job, he can come work for me, which is the doctor's way of saying this was indeed a miracle.
Yeah. You know, right here in the Bay Area, we have Dr. Susan Richards, dear friend of this church, who was a medical doctor and did a lot up at Stanford. And she began to pray for quadriplegics, paraplegics, and they would actually walk.
Yep.
And one guy runs marathons now.
Yep.
And she documents, like a doctor would, she documents all these. And just a little bitty woman just goes around and just goes to churches and just, and the way she prays naming all kinds of different things I never heard of because she's a doctor. And she speaks to the blood and she speaks to different organs and speaks to different things. Like she's filling out a prescription. And boom, here comes the supernatural intervention, mighty working of God.
And if you ever watch Dr. Susan minister, she's very kind of low-key is how I would say it. She doesn't exaggerate. She doesn't get excited. She's very calm when she's doing this, almost to the point of understating everything. And she talks about these miracles and is kind of understated, but they're bona fide, documented miracles. And what I appreciate about Dr. Susan, many things, is she has medical records on these people.
Right.
To prove that there were miracles, not just hearsay or hope so, proven miracles. And this isn't something that happened 20 years ago during a healing revival. It's something that's happening right here in Silicon Valley.
I heard an amazing story of a little Pentecostal preacher up in Everett, Washington, a little bit above Seattle, and there's a Navy base. And I've preached at Everett for Frank Pena, Ron Canoli, and I, and Adam used to go up back in the early 90s quite a bit for a wonderful, wonderful church up there. Well, this was back in the 50s. And this woman came to this little Pentecostal preacher, small church, and her husband was in the Navy, dying of cancer. And Pastor, would you please go pray for him? None of the pastors believe in healing the way you do. Would you please go pray? So he went to the base, but they wouldn't let him. And finally, he got an appointment with the commandant, or whatever you call the head guy there. And the guy said, well, you know what? I'll go with you because
Want to make sure no.
Yeah, I want to make sure there's no
funny business going on.
And he said, well, thank you, sir. And the guy was 99% dead, gone. Tubes, laying there, yellow, jaundice, had the death look. And this is absolutely true. The little preacher walks in there and looks at him and slaps his feet and says, Jesus, about time you did something, and walked out. And the commandant said, that's it? That's your prayer? And right then the guy raised up on the bed and looked around like, what's going on? And it freaked everybody, freaked everybody out. And what happened was they made that little preacher the chaplain, and from then on he was allowed to pray for anybody and everybody in that Navy hospital. Yeah. About time you did something, Jesus.
I love talking about miracles. You know, a personal testimony, an eyewitness testimony is one of the strongest legal arguments we can have. Sure. You know, we've seen something, we've been there, our own eyes have beheld it. And I think of some of the miracles that I've seen. You know, you get this crazy faith when you've seen miracles. You know that God can do anything. I was in Spokane years ago holding a missionary conference, and a man came in, and he came into the prayer line. I'm praying for people to have backs healed. Well, this fellow started crying, laughing, bending over, touching the floor. I've seen that before. But what was different about this, the man had been out walking through the park. A couple of young people grabbed him, brought him into the service, said, you need to be here. He had a rod implanted in his back. He'd had back surgery, so he had a metal rod, and it disappeared. The rod disappeared. It was impossible for him to bend over with any range. Now he's putting his hands on the floor. He's crying, and he came up to me and he said, how is this possible? What happened to the rod? I said, I don't know. Do you want it back? He said, no. So that's half of the story. The other half is, years later, I'm thinking 20 years, I'm back in the same church, Rick Sharkey's church in Spokane.
I knew it was Rick, yeah.
And I said, and I'm up preaching, and I said, you know, does anyone here remember when we had the missions conference and the man got healed of the back and a rod disappeared? And Pastor Sharkey said, a woman. And I argued with him from the pulpit. I said, no, Pastor Rick, I remember it was a man. He said, a woman. I said, Pastor Rick, I'm arguing with the pastor, which I want to tell you, young preachers, don't ever do that. And he said, no, you don't understand. There were two people in that service. There was a woman who had a piece of metal that was in her back disappear. Two people in the same service had rods that were in their spine disappear. Now, if that's not a miracle, what is a miracle? I mean, it was there, now it's gone.
Right.
I mean, how can you explain that outside of a supernatural intervention of God? So I don't know, that popped in my mind. We're talking about miracles, but I have high expectations for Friday Night Fire. Well,
in the Bay Area, and the way we're wired here with Stanford, Berkeley, San Francisco, and this is some of the brightest people in the world, and God bless them. This is the center of technology, arguably, maybe not even arguably, of the world, and we're a magnet for people from Harvard and from Caltech and from the great schools of Korea and Asia and India. And intellect seems to fight against the supernatural because we want to prove things. If we can't prove it scientifically, we have a hard time believing. When I say we, I'm speaking the community here. But when you're right, when somebody sees something that's undeniable, all that goes out the window.
Yeah.
All that. Can you imagine when Jesus began to do things, these blue-collar fishermen who only heard stories of Elijah centuries removed, and for 400 years there was no real word of the Lord after Malachi. What a lot of people don't realize is, in Malachi failed his assignment. Because Malachi, God, speaking to Malachi, return to me, they didn't.
Oh, yeah.
No, they didn't. Bring the tithe. They didn't. And within 100 years or so, here comes Rome. Mm-hmm. Here comes, and now you got this mess, Palestine, land of the Philistines. That's what the Romans called it. And here comes Jesus, out of Nowheresville, Nazareth. And all of a sudden, he's doing these. Can you imagine? But they start seeing these miracles. It's like, where is this? Well, what was it? Nicodemus said, you have to be from God, because
nobody could do these miracles.
Nobody can do
God
these
be
things.
With him,
I mean, from walking on water to raising the dead to opening blind eyes. And then he tells them, and he's even telling us, go and do likewise.
Yeah. Well,
and even greater.
The disciples asked him, said, what must we do to work the works of God? And they didn't use the word miracle, they said works of God, which I like that term, works of God, because when you say miracle, different connotation, different meaning. Works of God, okay, this is how God works. When God is working in your life, it's miraculous. Salvation is miraculous, being filled with the Holy Spirit. There's all kinds of miracles that happen every day, but we don't see them as being miraculous, the works of God. And I like Jesus' answer. What must we do to work the works of God? Now, if we faith preachers were preaching this message, we'd have 7 steps or 13 steps. And Jesus said, believe on him whom God has sent. Yeah. There's one criteria for miracles. Believe on Jesus. Praise God. Yeah. That's not hard. Do you believe Jesus is who he says he is, can do what he says he can do? Do you believe Jesus? That's the criteria for a miracle, if you believe Jesus.
The reason I'm sitting here, the reason I'm a pastor, I'm in the ministry, was because my wife died. Yeah. And God raised her from the dead. And I wasn't a Christian. I was just existing, but I married a Christian. I married a little Baptist girl. And I joke around, I said, you must not have been a good Baptist to marry me. A good Baptist never would have married me. But sometimes love is blind.
It was compassion.
It was compassion. And she said when she was a little girl, she always told God, I want to marry a missionary and I want to marry somebody named Richard. She didn't know that Dick or Dickie is a nickname, Ricky, for Richard.
Richard William.
Until later on when she goes, your name's Richard? She goes, oh my God. Anyway, here we get married. My daughter's born December the 11th, 1976. December the 21st, my wife hemorrhages unto death. I'm 105 miles away remodeling the rotunda in Sacramento of the Capitol Dome, earthquake retrofitting because of the big 75 earthquake in Oroville. That's 4 miles from the epicenter. Working out. In fact, Aaron Rodgers, the great quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, went to the community Butte College there, and I helped build the Science Center. Well, because of the big earthquake in 75, this now is in 76, where we got this great job there for a couple of years, actually, and I had to drive 105 miles one way, 105 miles home, and I got a call from my sister-in-law that Carla would probably be dead by the time I got there from hemorrhaging because the placenta wasn't discharged at birth, and the doctor, could have been a malpractice, but we didn't get into that. And here I am talking to a God I don't really know, in between crying and cussing and smoking a cigarette nervously and screaming. My little F-100 deer hunting truck would only go about 60 miles an hour, and I'm screaming up Highway 70 trying to get to Feather River Hospital, and she flatlined. And just flatlined the machines, and she was gone. And she said she came out of her body and went into this beautiful place. She goes, yes, there's a light, not like a light spotlight, but a light. And she goes, it was the most peaceful, and off to the side, Jesus, Carla, and stopped her. You can't come. And she said, why, Lord? I want to. I told her later, I said, wait a minute. you got me, your new husband, you got a baby? And she goes, oh, honey, she goes,
yeah.
you have no idea. She goes, when you're that close to glory, you don't want to go back to anything. I said, wow, kind of hurt my feelings, but whatever. Yeah. And Jesus said, you have to go back. I have something for your husband and you to do. And all of a sudden, she said she felt herself like sinking and back into her body, and boop, 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 the machine started going again, heartbeat, blood pressure, all that stuff. Well, when I got to the hospital, I was expecting the worst, because the doctor, the little 5'4" Mormon named Dr. Phillips, had a cigarette, and I could see his hand shaking. I said, she's dead, she's dead, she's dead. But I prayed to God, I prayed to a God I didn't know about Marysville, about halfway up. Please don't let my wife die. Wasn't a great prayer. Please don't let my wife die. That's all I could say. And when I got there, Dr. Phillips goes, come on, Dick. He grabs my arm. He goes, we've had a minor miracle. He used the word
major miracle.
Yeah, he said he used the word. He goes, we had a little minor miracle. He goes, I thought we lost her, but she's stable. She's you can spend a couple of minutes. And when I went in there, she was white, lips were yellow. She looked like death. And she goes, I'm so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry. I go, oh. And I remember Larry walking outside. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait. And it was a beautiful one of those cobalt blue, fluffy white cloud, high kind of Sierra, up about 2,500 feet in the Sierra Mountains, town of Paradise, California. It was winter, one of those crisp winter days, beautiful, beautiful day. I remember that vividly. And I remember looking up and I said, thank you. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
I said, thank you, because then I'm thinking, wait a minute. There really is a God who answers prayer. My wife almost died. Took her 2 months to tell me, oh no, I did die. I left my body. And then it really got me going of believing everything that's in this book is possible today in modern Silicon Valley, California, America. In the year 2017, there are still miracles. There's a miracle waiting for you right now.
We have a gentleman who goes to Jubilee. He may not want me to mention his name, but scientist, educator, several degrees, higher degrees, dean of one of the greatest schools in America. And one of the things, and quantum physics, cognitive science, and he's right here front and center at Jubilee, reading the Bible, believing, because he does believe in the supernatural. Mm-hmm. And he said this to me, he might have mentioned it to you, that scientists today are beginning to accept the supernatural as one of the explanations for creation, because this thing of evolution doesn't make sense to them. There's intelligent design behind it. So anyway, the reason I said that is that we do have people who are educators, people who are in science and technology, who have advanced degrees. Not everybody in Jubilee has advanced degrees, a little bit of everything, bikers, street people, blue collar. But we have people, and they're attracted to the supernatural. Yeah. So I believe the message of miracles is right for the Bay Area. And I want to say this, and then I know we're out of time, because I'm still thinking about Friday Night Fire. You and I both traveled around the world. We both had miracle crusades. You know, you can't advertise a miracle crusade if you don't have miracles.
Well, not only that, in India, the first night sets the tone.
You got to have them on the first night.
Like when I got to preach to 1.6 million people in India. The first night there might have been 250,000 people, but it built up to the last night of 550,000. Excuse me, 500.
They hear about the miracles
because they hear what's going on, and it was all over Indian newspapers. In fact, it said, one paper said, largest crowd since Gandhi was my crowd in 1995. Now there's been bigger crowds since then, not too many, but we had aggregate count of 1.6 million, 800,000 received Christ as their Lord.
Well, I wanted to say that about credentials. You know, the disciple said, "No man can do these things except God be with him." And you and I both know about miracles. That's been part of our bread and butter is the miraculous. And we're going to have Friday night services. We will be contending. I will. I know you will too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our intercessors praying for you and your family and friends to have miracles.
Some of you that are watching, drive down on a Friday night. it's worth the traffic. After church, be no traffic, no matter where you're going. There's no traffic at 9:30. But if you really need a miracle, you're fighting a disease or some life-threatening malady, or your marriage is
complications in your life.
Yeah, and it's going to take something supernatural to change and alter the situation you're in. Believe God. Come and believe God. Mm-hmm. We're not, I've never healed a fly with a broken wing, but it's amazing what Jesus can do through people like you and I. That we're just conduits. We just believe that heaven wants to come to earth in a spectacular, miraculous way, and so we're just servants. We're just humble servants of the Lord, trying to bless people because they're the greatest witnesses to. Come and see the man that knows everything about me. All of a sudden, the whole town from Samaria comes.
Come and see.
Come and see. Come and hear. Come and see.
Yeah, that's what Philip said to Nathaniel. Well, come and see. Come and see.
And Nathaniel being a little cynical.
Yeah, he was a little bit religious, a little cynical.
Anything good come out of, and it's amazing. When Jesus said, "I saw you under the fig tree, my Lord, my God."
Yeah.
Just one word of wisdom or knowledge. Of I saw you, which was impossible for him to see him under the fig tree. And he probably knew what Nathaniel was thinking.
Sure he did.
Like, I wonder where God is. I wonder, It's kind of like me on my 30th birthday in Utah, looking up in the snow. Are you up there? That was the beginning of my journey to find God, was on a snowy night in Ogden, Utah, in the Wasatch Mountains. Hey, we got 1 minute left, Larry. Hey, everybody. We'll continue these talks, and if you would like to email us or write us here, dickb@Jubilee, and you have an idea, or, you'd like us to discuss something, eschatology or faith or whatever, give us a call, give us an email, or hit us with a response, a letter, and we'd love to try our best. We'll try our best to answer your questions. Anything else there, Doc?
No, I'll weigh in on the easy questions, and you can handle the hard questions.
I'll handle the book of Revelation. It'll be real quick. Just believe everything that's in there. All right, everybody, we'll see you right here on KTLN.
To get this teaching and other valuable resources, visit our online store at jubilee.org. Download our app to get connected, watch sermons, and stay up to date with events. Thank you for watching Jubilee with Dick Bernal. If you'd like to contact us, visit our website at jubilee.org.